ask you some questions. You can say whatever you want. And then eventually at the end, we'll also leave some time for the audience to engage with us. We'll talk about the transformation you're doing at Accenture, and I'll return to that because that's close to operational excellence, which is sort of also the core tenet of the Deming Prize that we're recognizing you for. But what's top of mind for many of us at the business school is AI and consulting, and basically where the industry is today and where you see the industry going tomorrow. And perhaps you can tell us from the lens of what you're doing in Accenture. So maybe we can start with that, because I'm pretty sure that's the first thing that is on my mind, for sure.
So I'm very honored to receive the Deming Cup on behalf of Accenture. It's really a tremendous honor. I do want to say one quick story. The last time I was at the business school, first of all, it did not look like this. Amazing. Was when I was a first-year associate at Cravath. And I figured out that I needed to know something about how companies make money. And so I came to the business school library, and I bought, not a book school, the bookstore, and I bought a book on accounting. And I taught myself accounting. And I made friends with every accountant on every deal, and nobody made friends with the accountants. And so, that's how I learned accounting. So at the business school, I was like, why didn't I take advantage of it when I was at the law school? So,
I'll do that too, because I still haven't learned accounting, but that's a different story.
Knowing how you make money is really critical, and that starts with understanding financial statements. Maybe just a quick show of hands. How many people are thinking about a consulting career? Okay. How many of you are worried that consulting is not going to exist? Okay. I can assure you that if you talk to any CEO, they will tell you that they need consulting. In fact, in many ways, more than ever. But they need a different kind of consulting. In many ways, this is Accenture's moment. So I won't say which firm, but I recently had the CEO of a company say, we were doing a workshop, and normally the leadership team, my leadership team on my account, didn't meet with the CEO. And I had met the CEO, talked to him about our vision around AI, and he asked me to come in and do a 3-hour workshop. And I started the workshop by saying, everything we talk about is going to be about RR. Real reinvention. So everything we share, we've actually done. And then we dazzled them with really significant impact that we've done across companies. At the end, he said to me, he said, normally I would go and I would spend, I'd pay for a 12-week, sprint with one of my sort of strategy houses. And at the end of the 12 weeks, they would tell me, go faster. He's like, now I get your business model, because we had pitched actually an 8-week sprint. He said, at the end of 8 weeks, you'll give me a plan. And so one of the things to really think about today is in a world where, pretty PowerPoints are now being generated, and you get a lot of things, is where are you going to what do companies actually need? And they need experience. And they need companies who've actually been able to execute. And it goes right back to operational excellence. Right? Accenture is known, and I'm not trying to plug in to come to Accenture, but if you're thinking about consulting, you want to be at a firm that delivers outcomes. And that might be at a firm who does, like an A.T. Kearney, right? It's an amazing company. They really deliver outcomes. And the days of a lot of PowerPoints are gone. And I've been trying to get rid of PowerPoints for my entire career practically, but they're really going away now. And so I believe it's very complicated to use AI, and companies absolutely need, and there's going to be the AI, for example, physical AI, what's going to happen in manufacturing, that is to come. I think it'll be the next decade of work. And, right, it really does require to be able to have knowledge and deliver things. So I'm not worried about it going away, but I do think it's fundamentally changing.
So when it changes, when you think about how it's changing in how you practice the craft, what are the key things that have changed in the composition of your teams, on the types of things that you do, how you work? And then maybe where are you seeing impact when you're implementing things on clients? Because in some sense you're saying what's important is to actually deliver ideas that are actually implementable and can affect the client. But where are you seeing that, and how has the process of doing these projects changed?
Well, first
or
of all,
the talent, or the talent.
Maybe first to sort of say, what does it mean to deliver an outcome, right? So I'm working on something right now where we'll take out almost $2 billion in costs over a 3-year period, and at the end of those 3 years, they will have the technology that they'll be using the latest advanced AI to do a lot of things, so that we're modernizing the technical while we're taking out costs. And right now, everybody wants outcomes in addition to cost, but there's nobody who doesn't want to take out cost, right? And I actually have to deliver that because I have a contract that says, in this case, it's a managed service, so where every year they're going to pay me less, right? So it's not like a theory. It's I'm going to stand behind it. But it's not enough to actually say to a company, because they're really betting. If you don't do it, it's not it won't matter. The fees I'd have to pay will not matter. They actually need me to deliver something, right? It's not enough that I would be penalized for not getting it. And so that's the kinds of things that we will do. What's changed, so first of all, if anyone tells you that they know the answer to our entry level going away and that, no one knows the answer yet, right? And why is that? Well, first of all, no one can answer the question, if I don't have anybody entry level, how do I ever have senior people again, right?
Yes.
But the other point is, and the way we think about it at Accenture is, our communities require us to provide paths of entry-level jobs. Forget the thing, if you don't have someone started that, but we absolutely, can you imagine a world where there are no entry-level jobs? The destabilization of that. So we're spending a lot of time thinking about what to do. So for example, starting at Accenture this year, if you're an analyst, you get communication training. Why does that matter? Because a lot of the AI that is available now allows you to do something that you might have done as a second year. But you don't have 2 years of learning all the skills of being client-facing. And so what we've said is, we need to help build those skills faster than the apprenticeship model where you're kind of learning for a couple of years. We're doing that now at every level, including our managing directors, because the second thing you have to do today is things are going to constantly change. So if you lead anyone, you have to be able to help them change. You need to be a good communicator. And so we're trying to figure out, because we think it's the right thing to do, how do we make entry-level jobs more effective? And by the way, it's a good business thing too, right? If you have lower cost, from having more junior people. But I would say that the jury's out about how exactly, and it'll be different in different parts of our business. It doesn't change what each of you needs to do, right? Which is, generic skills are not helpful, right? People are not going to just buy people who are just smart thinking, right? You've got to be able to, whether it's through the experience of what you do when you're working, whether you're studying, but being able to, bring something that is not only I'm smart, right, and I have a lot of skills. Those are important too, and you'll hear a lot of people say, I need more liberal arts. I'm a liberal arts student. I graduated from Claremont McKenna. But for example, we've always looked at people who've worked most of their summers, not fancy jobs, but we know that people who've worked bring something different, whether it's customer service, discipline. So I think it's not that these are not necessarily new, but they're more important today in a world where sort of a generic skill set and a great degree are not as differentiating as they once were.
You mentioned investing in people and investing in people that you have in the firm across the chain. And you speak a lot when you read about what you do. You speak a lot about having a mentality of a forever learner. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, first of all, we spend over $1 billion a year. So that's
$1 billion
for learning.
For learning
Invested in
for
our people.
For your employees.
The average employee has 40 hours of training, year in, year out. So, and it goes back in 2013, we're the first company that said every business would be a digital business, which, by the way, most companies fought us about, like, you're crazy. Now you think about that and it's like a different world. And our business was less than 20% digital, cloud, and security. And so we said, first of all, there weren't all these people to go hire. And imagine, like, we were facing that most of our business was not what we believed would be relevant. So we had to completely change, and we did that over a 6-year period. We went from 2013, sort of much less than 20% to 70% by 2019. And we did that mostly organically, right? So we had 250,000 people at the time, and we trained. We definitely did acquisitions, and we hired people, but those skills didn't exist in the market at scale. And so that idea of learning really being part of our core competency and strategy started. So if you think about where we are today, so in November of 2022, when ChatGPT started, we had 30 people out of our 40,000 AI and data professionals at the time who were working on Gen AI projects. 30. We had less than like 4 or 5 clients. Most of it was being like R&D. So November 2022, 40,000 AI and data professionals, 30 people working on Gen AI. Today, we just finished our fiscal year, 6,000 projects last year, $3 billion in revenue, 77,000 AI and data professionals. Most of that built organically. So we've definitely hired people and acquired some companies, but a lot of it was about upskilling. So when we use the word reinvention, that's a reinvention. Now we're on our way and we have to keep going. We've also trained over 500,000 people in the fundamentals of Gen AI, and we just kicked off for every person at Accenture agentic AI training. Right? So that's what learning means for us.
My colleagues in audience were listening. This is fantastic. Let me go back to operational excellence. You mentioned the word reinvention, and you just latched upon one thing, which is sort of how do you reskill even your workforce in preparing them. And this was like something that started 10 years ago. But in some sense, you have been restructuring the entire Accenture. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey? Because that sort of touches upon not just only thinking about the future and positioning the company, but also about leadership and how you execute, because moving people is actually eventually the hardest thing and the best thing that one can do.
So probably one of the biggest reasons I'm CEO today, from just like what have I accomplished, was because when I became the CEO of North America, I had to put in a new operating model. We call it a growth model, and the reason for that is, and for those of you who've worked at companies already, you'll know this, no one gets excited about an operating model change. So we started calling it a growth model 10 years ago because like it's all about growth, right? And actually it does work. It's much better to call it a growth model. So when I became, so I had done it as a CEO of North America, and when I became CEO, the big question for the board was who would be able to do the next operating model? Because we'd gone from this very small amount of digital to now it was everywhere. We were very complex. We had to change how we operated. And I had done it successfully when I was running North America. And so in the first 6 months of becoming CEO, I put in the biggest change in our history, which was pretty big given we'd already just like changed our whole business, in over a 6-year period. I changed our P&L in the middle of a fiscal year. I got rid of one element of our matrix. Something changed for 200 of my top 300 leaders and 99% of our 500,000 people. And we announced, designed, and implemented in 6 months. Then, that was March 1st, it went into, it went live. March 11th, the pandemic was declared. And thank goodness we'd changed, because the changes we put in place were the ones that were really necessary. But in September, we made another change to our model. And we had said we have to be a company that can continuously reinvent and can act with speed. And what had happened between March and September is cloud. Like, the need to be digital had exploded, right? Because we'd all gone online. And so we saw an opportunity in the market to win in cloud, but we didn't feel like we were set up enough for it to move as fast as the market. Even though we knew cloud was going to be big, it had just completely changed. So on September 15th, we announced another change to our operating model. We created a business called Cloud First, put all of our cloud together. It was a $12 billion business. 12 months later, it was an $18 billion business. And this idea of both continuously reinventing yourself and embracing change and being able to set up as a company to move with speed. And so if you think about those lessons and then you translate it to the story that I just said about going from 30 people in 2.5 years to what we've gone today, it's this foundation that we have at Accenture of being able to embrace change, to see when you have to, really matching your strategy and your structure. And so we made another big change recently. And this was bigger than the last change. So I had, for decades at Accenture, our services have reported to the CEO. So way before me, for the last 50 years. And yet, what our clients buy today from us, over 80% of it is multi-service. So we have strategy and consulting, we have technology, we have song, which is, think about that as customer, industry X, we have operations. So we have all these different services, but most of actually, no one buys consulting. They buy a customer reinvention, they buy a finance transformation. So our strategy was to be the reinvention partner of choice, to bring these services and solutions, but our structure was very siloed. It's not very popular to tell someone who reports to the CEO that they're no longer going to report to the CEO. It's the biggest change in our history. And now all of those services report to someone who reports to me, because what we're selling is actually not an individual service. It's those things together. That's what makes us unique. It's why we had 129 clients last year buy $100 million or more in a single quarter. Unheard of in our industry. They weren't buying a service, they were buying a solution that came together. And the ability to make those hard changes is why Accenture has been successful. And when you think about your careers, individually, it's the ability to say, what do you have to change? I talk a lot about, in this age of AI, what did I do yesterday and what am I doing tomorrow? And if there's not a big delta, then I've probably not changed enough. And that's something I think as you go through your career is really important, is really questioning yourself about, am I learning enough? Am I changing enough? And the moment that you look at your career and you say you haven't done something different in the way you're working on it, you're probably not learning enough, because the world around us is moving very, very fast.
Well, you're known as someone who promotes humility. Obviously, you can tell from just being here and learning and openness. How do you encourage that to future business leaders here without, where in our world, especially, you kind of demand, the demand of the average, especially young person, is to kind of have the answers, right? How do you balance having answers and being prepared and being useful and being kind of adding value and information to the problem set, and at the same time demonstrating that sometimes you don't have the answer, and being transparent about that and being humble with that position?
So we have a leadership essential that I added when I became global CEO, said lead with excellence, confidence, and humility. And humility means you build great teams, you're a learner, and you can have humility but and lead with excellence and confidence. Really, I went back to my father when I was a sophomore in high school because, grew up with modest means. I was doing speech contests in order to make money for college. My dad painted cars for a living, didn't graduate from high school. So I'm in the semifinal round of the Lions Club, and we go, and I lose to a daughter of a president of the Lions Club. Mm-hmm. So like I'm driving home, I'm complaining to my father. I'm like, she was cutesy, blah, blah, blah. And my dad looks at me, and he says, you will never be the daughter of the president of the Lions Club or any other club. And I think you can be anything you want to be. But you have to be so good that they have to give it to you. And tonight, you are not that good. So, huge gift, my first constructive feedback.
How old were you? What was this?
15.
Okay, good.
Also, his point was, I could do anything, have the confidence. Have to be deeply excellent. And you have to have the humility to know when you're not. There will be times in every person's life in this room where you will just not be as good as you should have been.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's okay. And so I think it's that quality, though, is why my superpower is that I ask for help. I know this is hard to believe, but you can be an innovative lawyer. And I will tell you, and I don't say this very often, but I think I'm in a friendly audience. I am the reason, primarily, that private equity firms are public. Because I took the first private equity firm public, Ripplewood in Belgium, and then KKR, which you probably all was our second deal. But I pioneered that structure. Now, I don't say that often because most people do not think that was a public service to do that. But I'm at the business school. And to do that work took really bringing, because it was very complicated to do legally, and took bringing a lot of people together to come up with that structure. And I just never had a problem being like, let me go get the very, very best. And I think that is important, is, when you're asking for help, it just means that you're gonna bring the very best to whatever you're doing. Uh-huh. It's actually a sign of confidence. And if I look at my career and all the time, the other reason I'm probably in this spot is I asked for help to how to learn technology. When I joined Accenture as the general counsel, I didn't actually know what a CIO was. I never heard of one. I mean, I was at a law firm that delivered iced tea 3 times a day to my suite. We were not advanced technology, right? So I joined this company as the general counsel, and I realized that I really needed to understand technology, not out of contracts. Otherwise, I wouldn't understand the business. And so I asked someone to help me. A guy named Bhaskar Ghosh, who was running our India technology practice. He met with me every 2 weeks for 18 months, virtually. And then I just kept going.
As the lawyer.
So I was the general counsel,
yeah, he was,
and he was running tech, and I said, teach me tech.
Uh-huh.
And for any of you who are worried, because you all need to know tech, by the way, if you're worried you can't learn it, I can assure you, if I can learn tech, you can learn tech, okay? I was a lawyer with a lot of files, didn't know what CIO, and if someone had told me cloud, I still remember learning what the cloud was in the technology from a guy named Jack Seppel. But the point being is that you just have to have the humility to ask for help. And think if I hadn't been willing to say, I would not be the CEO of Accenture.
Yeah. And what about the future of kind of this human-centered leadership you're you have in your organization? How do you see that evolving, given all the technology roles and the impact of technology on kind of these human and management relationships for a very human focus, it seems, in your trajectory? How do you balance that with the kind of the path forward that's so kind of robotic in a way?
Look, I mean, I'm old enough to remember the typewriter and getting in the Apple IIe computer. Okay, so in many ways, AI is just going to be like part of like the computer and the mobile phone, and that's how we operate. And I'm sure you're using it in your own life now, right? You cannot stop that. Right? I was just talking to someone where they're doing a union negotiation, and the first thing they put in was no AI. Like, that's just like, it's not possible, right? It's not going to stop.
Did they accept it?
Okay. You can't. It's not possible to accept that. At the same time, at Accenture, in addition to teaching tech, data, and AI skills to everyone, you know, I just talked about how I'm like teaching communication skills. And the other thing we're doing is we're adding change management skills. You know, fundamentally, you know, like clients want to talk to people, right? And our job is to be the ones that like think up the new business models, right? That like explore new things. Like there's so much that tech opens up for, but you do have to prepare differently. Like there are jobs that are not going to exist. There are tasks that are not going to exist. And so we do have to, as companies, provide upskilling, as individuals, recognize that it's a continuous learning. Right?
How do you, given the enormous number of folks who you have in your organization, seems like it's a lot, sounds like a lot of people, it's like a little country. How do you ensure that all those people feel like you're listening to them and you're watching, seeing, you know, understanding where they are and their uncertainties and their kind of, and understanding their positioning vis-a-vis all these changes that are going on in the company and in the world, from the, you know, more junior folks to obviously the more senior people?
We live by a very simple statement that's been very important throughout my entire leadership at Accenture, and transparency builds trust. It's a very simple concept. Transparency builds trust. Sometimes that transparency are messages people don't want to hear, right? But when you are transparent, even if you don't like the message, it builds trust. And at Accenture, we have always led, that's a value of ours. And that's why, for example, like I'm very direct with people. Like, you know, if you don't want to learn new skills, you're not going to be able to succeed. And so at Accenture, for example, for the last couple of years, we've been training lots of people, we've been providing it. And this year will be the first year that people will start not being promoted if they're not using the tools that we provide. We didn't do that year one, we didn't do that year two, but the reality